We have all experienced those rare, perfect days. You wake up exactly 1 minute before the alarm, every traffic light turns green as you approach, the person you were just thinking about calls you out of nowhere. In these moments, life feels less like a struggle and more like a synchronized dance. It feels like luck. It feels like a happy accident. But have you ever noticed how these days seem to have a specific rhythm? There is a strange, quiet precision to the way events click into place. Most of us simply enjoy the ride and wait for it to happen again. We treat these moments as deviations from the norm. However, the consistency of this pattern suggests something else entirely. It hints at a hidden architecture beneath the surface of your daily routine. This is the moment where the logic of luck begins to fail and the mechanics of reality take over. We often dismiss these moments as outliers. We call them good days and hope they last until sunset. But then the shift happens. Suddenly, the effortless flow vanishes. You lose your keys. A simple conversation turns into a misunderstanding. The world that felt so cooperative just an hour ago now seems to be pushing back. Why do these shifts happen so suddenly? It is as if we are moving through different versions of the same day, alternating between a path of least resistance and a climb up a steep hill. This pattern appears more often than we realize, yet most of us have overlooked a vital detail about how it functions. We focus on the external events, blaming the traffic or the weather, without noticing the internal signal that preceded the change. There is a specific mechanism at work here, a silent dialogue between your state of being and the timing of your life. Watch closely, because the reason behind this alignment is far simpler than most people imagine. We often label these sequences of events as a streak of good luck. You find the perfect parking spot, the exactly right person calls you with the solution to a problem, and a project completes itself with zero friction. It feels as if the world has suddenly become a downhill slope. But then the momentum shifts. The next day, every small task feels like wading through deep water. The same skills that felt sharp yesterday now feel blunt. Most of us accept these cycles as the random weather of life. We assume some days are just off while others are on. However, if you look closer, the repetition begins to reveal something deeper. Have you ever noticed how these shifts often follow a specific internal change? The flow doesn't just vanish, it seems to retract. This is the strange consistency many people overlook. We focus on the what of our day, but we ignore the how. The pattern suggests that these moments are not random spikes of probability. They are symptoms. When life feels perfectly timed, you aren't just having a lucky day. You are witnessing a hidden structure responding to a very specific signal you are sending.
This is where the experience begins to make sense. We have been taught to view excitement as nothing more than a fleeting luxury, an emotional peak that comes and goes. But in the mechanics of your reality, excitement functions as something far more practical. It is a highly sophisticated navigational frequency. When you feel that spark of interest, no matter how small, you are not just feeling an emotion, you are receiving a signal from your true self. This signal is an indicator of alignment, telling you that a specific path is currently the most efficient route to your next destination. The perfectly timed days you've experienced weren't random gifts from the universe. They were the result of you unconsciously tuned in to this frequency. This reveals something important about how reality works. The flow is not something you find, it is something you inhabit. The teaching is actually much simpler than we expect. Your excitement is the literal resonance of who you are, acting as a sonar that highlights which doors are ready to open. When you follow it, you aren't just chasing a feeling. You are stepping into a reality that is already harmonized with your existence. This is the hidden rule behind the experience. We often imagine time as a single continuous line we are walking upon, but reality functions more like a high-speed film reel composed of billions of individual static frames. Your state of being is the projector.
When you are in a state of excitement or alignment, you are literally selecting a sequence of frames where the timing is seamless. Think of it like tuning a radio. The music is always playing on every station simultaneously, but you only hear the one that matches your current frequency. When your internal tuner is set to the frequency of your true self, you automatically shift into a version of reality where the green lights and the perfect phone calls already exist. This explains why the flow disappears the moment we ignore the signal. When we choose a path out of fear or obligation, we change our frequency. We effectively switch the channel to a broadcast where things are out of sync. This mechanism has been operating in your life since the moment you were born, quietly guiding every lucky break and every frustrating delay based on the signal you provide. Suddenly, the shift in your day makes sense. You aren't losing your luck, you are simply changing the station. If the mechanism is this simple, why is it so difficult to maintain? The answer lies in our deeply ingrained need for control. We have been conditioned to believe that life is a series of problems to be solved through sheer effort. We confuse caution with intelligence and interpret fear as logic. This is the moment the inner voice begins to argue against your own alignment.
When that small spark of excitement appears, perhaps an impulse to take a different route home or to start a conversation with a stranger, the mind immediately intervenes. It asks if the action is practical. It demands to know the final outcome before the first step is even taken. This is where many of us lose the signal. We choose the sensible path over the exciting one, not realizing that we are effectively walking away from the frequency of our own success. By prioritizing the safety of the known, we inadvertently anchor ourselves to a reality filled with friction. How often do we talk ourselves out of something that felt perfectly right, simply because we couldn't explain it to others? If you've ever felt this internal tug-of-war, I'm curious to hear about a time you felt a signal and chose to ignore it. To move back into that state of perfect timing, you don't need a massive life overhaul. You only need a simple compass. The formula begins the moment you face a choice, any choice. First, look at the options available to you right now and identify the one that contains even a shred more excitement than the others. It doesn't have to be a career change. It could be as simple as choosing which book to read or which path to take on a walk. Second, act on that excitement to the absolute best of your ability. Give it your full presence until you can take it no further. This is how the signal becomes action.
Third, and most importantly, move forward with zero attachment to what the outcome should look like. This is where the navigation truly begins. By letting go of the result, you prevent your old baggage and fears from steering the ship. This process works best when followed with a sense of light curiosity rather than the pressure to succeed. You are simply data testing a law of physics. When you follow the breadcrumbs of your interest without demanding a specific destination, you allow the mechanism of synchronicity to coordinate the details for you. If this perspective resonates with you, consider subscribing as we continue to explore the hidden interface between consciousness and reality. The shift rarely starts with something dramatic. It usually begins with a quiet, almost throwaway impulse. Imagine you are working on a stressful task when a sudden, unrelated curiosity strikes you to look up a specific book or reach out to an old colleague. Your mind might label this as a distraction, but instead of dismissing it, you spent 5 minutes following that spark. That one message leads to a conversation, which leads to a piece of information that perfectly solves the very stress you were feeling an hour ago. This is often how the shift begins. By honoring the small signal, you moved into a version of the day where the solution was already waiting. You have likely already experienced moments like this and dismiss them as mere coincidence. But notice the pattern.
When you followed that tiny breadcrumb of interest, the friction of your morning simply dissolved. How many times has a small, illogical decision changed the entire direction of your day? These aren't accidents. They are the visible results of the mechanism in motion. You don't need to wait for a miracle to change your momentum. You only need to respond to the next small signal that appears in your path. This changes the way we understand the experience of living. We often think of ourselves as travelers moving through a fixed landscape, trying to force the world to go our way. But this mechanism suggests something remarkable about the nature of reality itself. It implies that you are not just a passenger in time, but a navigator of frequencies. The perfectly timed day isn't something you earned through hard work.
It is a version of reality that already exists, waiting for you to tune in to its coordinates. This reveals a deeper meaning behind the signal of excitement. It is not just a random emotion. It is a biological interface connecting you to the path of your most relevant evolution. If you treat excitement as a navigation signal, the world stops being a series of obstacles and starts being a mirror of your alignment. You may already be standing at the threshold of this realization in your own life, noticing that the more you honor the signal, the more the world seems to reorganize itself around you.
Could these small impulses be guiding us toward versions of ourselves we have not yet explored? Perhaps the life you are seeking is not something you have to build, but a frequency you simply have to choose. Perhaps the signal has been there all along, waiting just beneath the noise of your daily routine. The perfectly timed day is not a destination you reach, it is a frequency you inhabit. As you move forward from this moment, you may begin to notice something new, a small curiosity that feels slightly heavier than before, a coincidence that seems a little too precise to be random. Sometimes the shift begins simply by noticing that you are the one holding the tuner. How many of these quiet signals have already appeared in your life today, waiting for you to recognize them? The pattern is already unfolding around you, inviting you to see reality not as a series of obstacles, but as a conversation. If you are ready to explore the deeper mechanics of how these internal signals physically reshape the world around you, the next chapter of this journey dives into the specific mystery of how your beliefs act as the lens for every experience you encounter.